everybody, and welcome to the Paranormal Portal. I'm your host, Brent Thomas. Thank you so much for joining us today. We've got an epic show ahead, but just remember, if any of you have experiences you'd like to share, I'd love to hear from you. You can either email me at paranormalportalradio@gmail.com or head over to paranormalportal.net and scroll down and find the button that says Interview Me, and that'll allow you to look at a calendar of possible times and dates and find a date that works for you. Love to hear your stories, so definitely get in touch with me. Hey everybody, and welcome to the Paranormal Portal podcast. I'm your host, Brent Thomas, and welcome yet to another journey into the strange and unusual, which is what we do here. Special thank you to everybody out there that's been supporting the show, and those of you that are taking it upon yourselves to let other people know. I really appreciate that. I don't advertise this show, so your endorsement means the world to me, so thank you all. Today we are welcoming a brand new guest to the show. And she's a wonderful person and has an incredible insight, knowledge, and experience into this world of the unknown. I am talking about Mrs. Monica Rawlins, who is joining me today and her show is Our Paranormal World, which you can find on YouTube and on Spreaker. And she's also an alumni of several other shows where she appears regularly, like Texas Front Porch, and of course, Bigfoot, Michigan Rob, and several more. So join me in welcoming Miss Monica to the show. Monica, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on today.
Hey, thanks for having me.
It is entirely my pleasure. I've got to start with the canned question. Like I always love having just discussions, and wherever they go, but I got to have the one canned question. So you ready?
I'm ready.
How did this start for you, Monica? How did you get into all this weird and wonderful world?
I was born weird, you know.
Perfect.
I was born weird, and weird just comes to me. No, seriously. Okay. So I was born and raised in Northern California.
Oh, okay.
And I was, Bigfoot legend, all kinds of legends. And I was fortunate enough to be very close to my grandparents. And I had a grandfather who very much believed in folklore and legends. And he encouraged my brother and I in our interests in that. Oh, cool. And I don't think I'm joking when I say that I was born weird, because I have had an interest in this from the beginning. So for as long as I can remember. Mm-hmm. And he very much nurtured our interests in it. He would, help us get books. I would always look for the odd books in the library about Native American legends and, anything like that. So that's really how it all started for me.
Oh, wow. And what was there experiences along the way? Did you have several experiences or a few experiences, or are you more just an academically interested in this, or can you explain that?
Well, no, I do actually have experiences. And my earliest memory of something strange, I can't say, it was before my parents separated. Okay. So I was like maybe 3 or 4. I was pretty young. Okay. And I remember, I had been put to bed and they had the curtains open and there was a light casting shadows on the wall. Mm-hmm. And I remember the shadows morphing into different things and changing and moving. And I remember one specifically was it changed into a person sitting in a rocking chair, rocking back and forth on the wall. And it freaked me out. And it's easy to chalk up to a child dreaming. Mm-hmm. And you could also chalk it up to a child's imagination, I'm sure. I try to be logical, but I also remember flipping out, getting out of bed and running down the hall. And this is the 70s. So we had the laundry in the hallway, and it had those wooden folding doors, that would hide the laundry. Mm-hmm. So I remember climbing up in there and kind of partially shutting the wooden doors because I was hiding from it. And I remember my father coming and finding me. sitting there, and getting in trouble for not being in bed. And I was like, didn't want to go back into the bed. And they were like, oh, it's nothing. You need to go back to sleep. So I don't believe I was asleep when I was seeing that.
Wow.
But along the way also, back to my grandparents, they used to take us up to visit my uncle and my cousins in Southwest Oregon every summer. So I spent all of my summers in Southwest Oregon. Okay. And it was in a pretty remote little hamlet there. And where my cousins and my uncle lived, it's a valley. So there are two, I call them mountains, that come together in a creek that kind of meanders, down through the valley. And on several occasions across the years, we had encounters with, I don't know what, something stalked my cousin and I when we were running to the bridge. We called it to the bridge. Okay. We would time ourselves to the bridge and back because it was exactly a mile down we called it the highway because it was the only paved road in the area. So it was just a 2-lane blacktop. That's all it was.
Sure.
And when we were coming back, I had exhausted myself. I had a stitch in my side. I really couldn't run anymore. And my cousin, who was in, considerably better shape because her parents didn't hotbox her in a car with cigarette smoke on the regular. so she was able to run better than I could. Sure. So she stopped and we were walking for a while. And I happened to be the one that noticed that something was in the tree line across the road from us, up the hill in the trees. And, it's pretty heavily forested and you couldn't really see it. It was later in the day, so there were a lot of shadows cast as well, but there was definitely something keeping pace with us. And when we would stop, it would stop. When we would go, it would go. It didn't make any noises. It was just following us. And my cousin did what she did every time they thought that something odd was there. She yelled, "Oh my God, it's a bear," and then took off. Oh. And left me. Just took off and left me. No. To die. Oh. So I tried to run and I probably got like 50 feet and I was like, well, I've lived a good life, I guess. At 16.
You're cashing it in. That was a good run.
Yeah, it's going to get me. It's going to get me. And it took off with us and stopped when I stopped. And it continued. And I was like, if it's my time, I guess, I was scared the whole time, but it didn't break the cover. Huh. And I was thinking, okay, well, I'm kind of close to the house. I just keep walking. It's better than laying down and dying on the side of the road, I guess. Right, yeah. So, obviously I made it back to the house, but it stopped following me a little ways. I can't even remember how close I was to the house when it stopped following me. Eventually it did like lose interest and I just couldn't hear it anymore at a certain point. Okay. So yeah, there was that. And there were a few other instances too, growing up, we had something growl at us that was level with our ears. We were on an elevated road. So we were maybe 3 feet off the forest floor and something in the dark, because this was at night, was ear level with us, just growled like a deep, loud growl. Oh my God. Yeah. Then I heard a howl at first, because there were dairy farms. There was a dairy farm next door. And my cousins and I went outside. It was about 1 a.m. And I remember it was a full moon because it was all lit up. And I got maybe 2 steps out the door. And at first I thought it was a cow because it started off kind of like a murr sound, like a moo. Sure. But then it crescendoed into this howl. It was a howl and it lasted for a long time. And that was the first time in my life that I had ever had the hair on my body, like just stand up. And it was off in the corner of the field down by the creek. I'd say on the border of our property with the dairy farm. And I froze. Both of my cousins froze. I looked at my cousin that was nearest me and she said, "I don't know what that is. I've never heard that before." And so I was like, okay, everybody inside, let's go inside. And enough of this. And then I proceeded to not be able to sleep that night because the bedroom I was in had a picture window with no drapery because we're out in the country and put curtains up. And I was convinced, like, I'm going to wake up and there's going to be something pressed against the window, because what I realized, that whatever that was had to have been huge, because the lung capacity for this thing, number one, it lasted for quite some time, but not only that, it was broadcasting so loud. So not only is it broadcasting, its endurance and volume was so much. I was like, that had to be huge lungs. I mean,
yeah,
I don't want, whatever that was, that front door isn't going to stop it. So,
right. Yeah.
And neither is that plate glass window.
Yikes. Wow. That's a lot to take in at a young age.
Yeah, it was a lot. But I mean, truly, this is all like spread out over several years.
Okay.
I mean, if it was all in one visit, I probably would not have gone.
Did you ever come to any conclusions of what this may have been? Obviously, you consider Bigfoot, and then you consider Dogman as far as large cryptids that growl and holler. What do you think you were dealing with in this case particularly?
So at the time, I always thought Bigfoot.
Okay.
I thought Bigfoot up until just several years ago, when I really started to put some credence to the Dogman stories. Mm-hmm. Well, really, I mean, I had a Dogman sighting, and that's what really solidified it. I mean, I had been doing Bigfoot research. I mean, I have been doing Bigfoot research for over 20 years.
Okay.
Like formally. Yeah. I've been interested and looked into it, obviously, my whole life, but formally for over 20 years. And in 2014, so the holiday season of 2014, 10 years ago, I saw one.
Oh.
And I didn't expect to. I was just, hearing more and more. And it's when the momentum with the Dogman stories was really just starting to pick up. And I was thinking, well, because at first I'd always been like, that's baloney. People are misidentifying Bigfoot. They're misidentifying bear. They're,
right.
They're all misidentifications. But then all of these stories are coming in. And I'm thinking, well, not all of these people can be misidentifying something.
Right.
Maybe there is something to it. I don't know. Mm-hmm. But then I have my sighting, and I'm like, oh, yeah. Okay. So, yeah, they're there.
What was the circumstance of your sighting? I guess we might as well dive into that.
Sure. So my sighting actually, it occurred in a very unusual place. It occurred in an area that I don't think anybody would expect to see a Dogman, because most people expect rural scenery, right? Mm-hmm. A farm, or you're hiking in the woods or something along those lines. And I saw mine in a very urban setting. I was in Dallas city limits when I saw mine.
Oh my God.
And
wow.
Yeah. So it's, shocking to see it. Number one. Number two, to see it in that setting is,
right.
And I didn't tell anybody for the longest time, because the first person I told was a very dear friend of mine who's also into Bigfoot research. And she told me that I didn't see what I saw. And, she's like, no, you didn't. You didn't see that. I was like, yeah, I did. She's like, no, you didn't. You misidentified. You don't know what you saw. And that made me so mad. Made me so mad. And when I told my husband, he said, well, I don't think you're lying. I think you saw something, but I it was hard for him to make that connection, which is understandable.
Yeah.
At least he didn't tell me I didn't see what I saw. So, I mean, when you get those kind of responses out of the gate, you tend to clam up. And my reputation in the Bigfoot research has always been, I'm very level-headed. I'm very reasonable. I wanted to keep that. I didn't want to be looked at as, Monica's cheese slid off the cracker. All right. So I just kept my mouth shut. I told a handful of people, that if I trusted them, I would, poke around and see their thoughts on Dogman before I would really dive into my story. Right. And it wasn't until really I started talking to Tex and everybody else that I got very comfortable, and I started just forget, like, look, I saw it. You could, if you want to call me nuts, but I know what I saw. So the story itself, I was driving to pick my daughter up from work one night, and it was late. She got off between 11 and 11:30, so it would have been in that time frame, between 11 and 11:30. It was holiday season, so it was after Thanksgiving. And I remember this because there was a Christmas lawn ornament that this thing was near. Oh. And it spelled joy, like vertically. It landed right next to it.
Perfect place for a dog man to be hanging out.
I know, right? It's the most wonderful time of the year. Come on.
Yeah, magical.
Wow. So I turned onto this residential street that connected the main artery I was on. It was a surface street. It wasn't a highway.
Okay.
It was a main artery for Dallas, surface street. And I turned into this residential street, and it's a pretty affluent area. They have large estates, like over an acre. Mm-hmm. And being that there's not a lot of street lights. There's not a lot of street lights on this street. So as I turned off of the main thoroughfare onto this residential street, there's one street light, like maybe 30 feet down. I'm terrible with distance. I'm terrible with like yards and all that. So there's one just a little ways down, right? And it kind of illuminates the area as you're turning on. And I hadn't even accelerated, right? I'm still slowed down for making the turn. And I'm just starting to press on the gas to accelerate. And I see movement like in the shadows off to my right, and it's low to the ground and it's moving pretty fast. I'm thinking I thought it was a golden retriever. Right. I thought it was a big dog, like running towards the street. And the way, my car is moving and the way this thing is coming, we're going to collide. So I don't push on the gas. I'm like, I don't want to hit a dog. So, I just kind of coast for a little while, and this thing changes its direction and starts coming towards me, towards my car. And I'm thinking, oh, okay. And I'm starting to turn my head and all of this is in slow motion. I mean, the entire encounter probably had like 30 seconds a minute. Mm-hmm. I start turning my head, and then I get hit with this feeling. And this is really what sounds probably the craziest thing to me. But I get hit with this sensation of dread, like just evil. I've never had that happen before. Okay. And I have been in very remote areas doing Bigfoot research. I've sat on dark roads by myself in the middle of nowhere, hours away from civilization. And, you get spooked, you hear a noise, you're like, oh, what was that? But, you're not like terrified. This was terror. Like, this was evil. This was like I have never had anything like that happen to me before for no reason. I still think this is a dog coming at me. And I suddenly have this sensation of danger and, all my hair standing up, and I'm like, all of my senses are like on. Yeah. And it's just this dread, this evil, like an evil, I guess. And sure. And I don't understand it. And I'm turning to look, and this thing, as it's getting closer, it stops running and it starts kind of like bounding, like hopping almost. And as it's getting closer, it's like the leaps are getting taller. And I'm like, what? It's like in my mind, I'm like, am I looking at? Until it lands. It makes one last jump and it lands maybe 10, 15 feet outside of my passenger's side window.
Oh, God.
And it lands next to this ornament, right?
Yeah.
And it lands in like a superhero pose, I call it a runner stance too, like one arm down and one arm up, like for balance.
Right.
And arm, okay. And as I'm turning and it lands, I can make it out. I'm still not looking at it directly. My head's still turning. And my mind is telling me, oh, you know what that is. You can tell by the outlet. You know what that is. Don't look right at it. You can't handle it. Like in my mind, I'm like, you can't unsee that. Wow. You can't unsee this. And I'm still getting this like danger Will Robinson, like, feeling.
For sure.
And I'm looking at it, and my mind is like, the inner narrative in my mind is like, don't look right at its face, because like, just don't look right at, you can't unsee it. You can't handle this. Don't look right at its face. Okay. So I'm looking like at its torso. I'm looking at its arm. I'm looking, because I remember how its ears were backlit. I remember the fine hair on it.
Wow.
I remember its snout was long, but not like super long. It was kind of stubbed.
Okay.
And I remember it had a hump on its back.
Okay.
Like a hyena. Right. So it didn't have a neck like you and I. It had kind of a weird hump. And so it lands and it puts its arm down. And I'm looking at it now. I'm like parallel with it, like still like slow rolling it, because I'm in shock. I mean, I'm not thinking about anything and other than what is that? And it ducks its head down, and it kind of cranes its neck forward, and it looks in the window like right at me. Wow. And then it starts like its neck, it starts following the car as I'm rolling by. And I snap out of it and I floor it. I hit the gas, and I just speed. Like, there were stop signs. Like, this is a pretty long road. I blew through everything going down that road. Wow. I didn't stop for anything. And I was afraid to look in the rearview mirror, because I am convinced this thing is coming after me. I'm waiting to feel it like land on my trunk. And I'm thinking they're going to find my car on the side of this road, and all the windows are going to be broken out, and there's going to be blood everywhere, and nobody's going to know what happened to me.
Right. Wow.
And so I gun it down the road. I blow through every stop. Thank goodness it was late. There was like nobody on this street. I get to my daughter's work, which is literally at the end of this street, right? So I get into the parking lot. I turn around, so I'm facing the street, because I still think it's coming for me.
Right.
And I'm like, let's go, sister, get in the car. Like, I don't want to sit here.
Right.
And she eventually gets in the car, and I debated for a minute, like, should I go back down there? Like, did I really see that? Like, if she sees it too, then I've got like, somebody else that can, say, oh yeah. But then I'm thinking, why would I do that to my daughter? Why would I do that to my daughter?
Right.
And number one, number two, I really didn't want that feeling again.
Right.
Like, I didn't want that. So we took the long way home.
Oh.
And yeah, we pulled up, get inside. I'm obviously locking all the doors. And I remember laying in bed that night, like, I was too afraid to go to sleep.
Right.
Because again, I'm thinking, can this thing smell me? Can it track me with scent? Can it find out where I live just from scent? Am I going to be getting out of my car one night and it's going to pop up like a daisy out of the bushes? I don't know what, I was scared. And I used to go running at night, through our neighborhood. And I tried one time after that to go running. And every time a leaf would scratch across the pavement, or the dog would bark in the distance, or the wind would rustle branches, I would freak. I think I got like a third of the way through my run and had to turn around and go back because I was so freaked out.
It's so amazing to me. And I think that perhaps as we've continued to expand in the world, maybe these urban type of encounters are only going to increase. If you think, I've thought about this a lot, and you think about these being omnivores of some kind. Now with Dogman, I don't know if they are as omnivorous as like Bigfoot, but there's certainly so much in our wasteful society that could sustain these things without problem. But it does seem like you just wouldn't expect that. In our cities, that's where we are, and nothing else is. Mm-hmm. Maybe a squirrel or some pigeons, and that's about the wildlife. But then people are having sightings like this, and it kind of boggles the imagination. But then again, we're better to survive than where you can forage and eat without a struggle, and
Sure.
of course,
Pets and
pets
yeah.
and strays and, not all, dumpster diving. There's a lot of reports coming out of people seeing them digging the garbage, but it isn't what you'd expect in Dallas. That's for sure.
No. I mean, and I was like racking my brain, like, where the heck did this thing come from? Like,
right.
We're in an area and there was a creek. Like these homes, you couldn't see them from the road, right? It was an expansive lawn or trees or whatever they had in their front yard.
Sure.
And you could see the roof of the homes that kind of sloped down towards a creek. So there's a lot of waterways in this area, but they don't necessarily connect to something more rural.
Right.
So I was just something that large, there's no way in my mind that it could get that far into Dallas without being spotted. Maybe it could. I mean, I don't know. I was just like, where was it hiding?
Yeah.
During the day, because you'd hear if somebody's like, oh, yeah, there's a werewolf walking, over by Preston Creek.
Right. Wow. So how far was home from where you saw this thing? Was it an extensive drive or was it a pretty short path?
No, it was maybe guessing maybe 5 miles, like as a crow flies.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, the other thing was that, you were talking about, well, could it find me? Could it track me? And there's so many accounts out there of people being out, miles from home, doing investigations and stuff, and then, going back home at the end, and then suddenly weird things start happening at home, which is miles away. And so
yeah,
I
know. And that's what I was like thinking with this. I was
right.
like,
and I know for people listening, it'd be like, well, how could it follow you? But there are stories of people's house pets, dogs and cats that have traversed the nation to find the family that moved. So they somehow, and I don't know if it's so much sense, but it's some other sense that they've developed that they can follow even across country and find people that there's no way they would be able to find without there being some kind of other process involved. But it happens. I mean, there's plenty of documented cases of that. And that's across country. So 5 miles for something that may want to eat you is nothing.
Right. Right.
If love can bring you across the country, then, you know.
What's Spite going to do? She got away.
Yeah, I was planning on eating that.
Not for long.
Meals on wheels. Let's go.
Literally on wheels.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's very interesting. The other interesting thing is, and this comes up all the time, as you're aware as well, with the that sudden sense of evil and fear. It comes up with people in the forest. Like, it was a beautiful day and we're walking through the woods and boom, it's like they hit a wall and suddenly they're in terror and they don't know why. So it does seem that these beings, and it could be Bigfoot and Dogman, or it could be just Dogman, I don't know, but one version or both seem to be able to do that, to manipulate our emotions like that and cause us this distress. Or it's just some higher part of ourselves going, no, there's something horrible here. Get the hell out. Yeah. Which do you think? I mean,
I think it's our lizard brain. I think it's the higher part of ourselves. It's what we've forgotten, our survival instinct kicking in.
Yeah, like from our journey up the food chain. Yeah, probably.
Yeah. I think it is. I mean, and I'm not saying that these things aren't putting off something that's triggering that in our minds.
Right.
I think maybe it's a combination of the two. But I do think, because I've been in the woods. I had to have been in the vicinity of, not necessarily Dogman, but, Bigfoot, I would almost guarantee it before. And I've never in my life. I mean, I've been, like I said, I've been spooked. I've been uneasy. I've been like, well, it feels kind of weird around here.
Sure.
But never, ever have I had that just freaked out, like imminent, like danger. Well, maybe when the howling was going on in Oregon when I was a kid, right? All the hair on my head stood up, but it was a response to the howl.
Sure.
So this was like out of nowhere, this just seemingly out of nowhere, just this, wave of this like evil and get out of here. Like your life is in danger. Like you are in danger.
Right. And what makes that more poignant to me is the fact that, if you see a dog man and then you feel that terror, well, yeah, you saw something that just isn't tracking and you're in a state of trauma and stress and disbelief, but you thought it was a dog. And then the waves of those fears hit you. And it's like, that to me is much more poignant and really speaks to the fact that there's something else at work here because, it wasn't just a visual recognition like, oh, that's not right. You saw a dog running and you just dismissed it as a dog. And then that emotion hit and it was like, wait, something's really wrong here. And, hence the rest of your experience. No, I did kind of touch on this urban sighting, why that might be, but have you thought about that? Why do you think these beings might be in those areas? Do you agree that it could be that they're just finding easy predation in here or in our urban areas or what? Have you got any thoughts on that?
See, I've thought about it and it could be, that it's easy pickings, but there's still easy pickings out in the country. It's not as barren as you would think. And it seems to me that they're intelligent. All the encounters that I have seen on the internet, like read or heard from other people, like they'll purposefully terrorize someone. They know what they're doing. There's a thought to it. And it seems that they don't want to be seen unless they want to be seen, if that makes sense.
It does.
And the more urban the setting, the more likely you're going to be spotted whether you want to be or not.
Sure.
So it doesn't make sense to me for them just to wander in like a stray dog just sniffing out a meal. That seems very purposeful, but I can't figure out why Dallas.
Yeah.
Why that area? Because I have a friend who's like way on the conspiracy, like way down the conspiracy chain.
Okay.
And he's like, oh, I think it's supernatural. And I think that, all of those people over in that area, some of them are ridiculously generationally wealthy. They're probably doing some weird things and they summoned something. And I think what you saw was the result of that.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm not saying I buy into that. That's what one of my friends was throwing out there for it.
No, I think that's, I mean, God only knows what's possible. Of course, I certainly cover the spectrum here on the portal and dealing with, summoned things as well as, supernatural, Fortean, ufological, alien kind of stuff. So it's anybody's guess. It's such a grab bag, but I guess the one big takeaway for me is that I've learned that you can never say something is impossible anymore.
Oh no, I never say impossible. Because the minute I say impossible, something happens and it's proven possible.
Yeah, then it happens. What do you now? It would have been when you examine that experience, it would have been very easy for this thing just to duck back into the shadows and not be seen. Like if, as you're alluding to, like, they aren't seen unless they want to be seen. But it's like this thing wanted you to see it. It did everything it could to make you aware of it, and that does seem in a sense like a contradiction. And I think the same thing about like Bigfoot road crossings, because some of the greatest and most common experiences sighting Bigfoot is there'll be a quiet country road and then, around, down come you on this dark road with your headlights on. And then that's exactly when the Bigfoot decides to come out. And it's like, if it waited 10 seconds,
it's like, hold on.
Yeah.
Almost in view.
Right. Yeah. And when you're in the country, especially, you can hear a car coming over a mile away. I lived up in the country back in Minnesota, and you could hear cars coming forever. It'd be like, oh, someone's coming. Then you just watch for, 20 or 30 seconds until it actually makes it. It's like, oh, there's, Phil, so,
right. And you can tell different cars too sometimes if
yes,
you really know your neighbors.
The size of the tires.
Sounds of engines.
Yeah, the engines, absolutely. But so, I mean, these creatures definitely aren't like, oops, you caught me. They seem to be very, very intentionally making these sightings happen. And it is a conundrum, right?
It is, and I hadn't really considered that with Bigfoot. With Dogman, I did consider like that because again, you read all of these stories where they absolutely have the opportunity to take somebody out.
Right.
If it were 100%, I just want to eat that person. Completely have the opportunity to do it, but don't. What they do instead is terrorize the person. They tap on the windows, you hear tap, 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 or they just stalk. They make themselves seen. They know it's going to scare the bejeebus out of that person, but they don't attack. Right. So that then begs the question, like, what is the purpose of, like, they're getting something clearly from this. Either it's a perverse, like, satisfaction from like freaking out the little hairless monkeys or they're supernatural and they feed off of that fear, right? Maybe they're at their core some kind of an entity that siphons off of that kind of fear, because I do believe in the paranormal. I do believe in spirits and entities, and I do believe that there are quite a few things that feed off of fear.
Right. Yeah. But it is bizarre. So do you have any kind of established opinion on this at this point? Or are you still, I don't know exactly what they are. Do you think they're flesh and blood? Do you think they're extra dimensional? Do you think that they're mostly spiritual that can manifest? What are your thoughts? I'm just curious.
I don't know what they are. I want to say flesh and blood because I'm logical. I do my best to maintain a logical position with everything. And I want to say flesh and blood. What I saw certainly appeared flesh and blood. Right. But again, there are stories of these things appearing in crazy situations. And again, why are they terrorizing some people and not fully attacking them? Is that, again, something where they're siphoning off energy? Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I could say that the same with Bigfoot. Sure. Some of them could, I would say that some of them could be flesh and blood. Some of them could be spiritual, interdimensional beings, right? But I don't know. I guess at the end of the day, I just don't know.
Yeah, and that's fair enough. And I guess it's kind of an unfair question to ask, but I tell you what, since doing this, I've run the full spectrum, and there's a lot of things that I just can't get my head around. And I'm not like you. I've got this very logical part of my brain that is engaged very much in these stories, trying to just make sense of it, having experienced several things myself. But I don't know what it is or what it could be. And so I find it fascinating that they could be a lot of things all in one. But again, when I hear about the supernatural Bigfoot, I don't discount that these people are telling me what they saw. And I don't discount at all that they saw these incredible events, but I get stuck. Like, I don't know what to do with it. I don't know how to process it. And that's where I get stuck too, because clearly these things are physical, at least some of the time, very physical. They leave footprints, they're observed eating, they break branches or, cause a ruckus or destroy things, knock on, houses, leave handprints, the whole gambit of very physical activities. But then there's this other side of it that is, also observed and reported, where it's like, well, yeah, but then it melted into nothing. And there was, this line of tracks stops in this middle of the field and there's nothing. And what do you do with that? And I don't know. That's the real tough part of it.
I hate to tell people when you hear stories like that, and you're trying to wrap your head around it and be logical about it. I don't want to tell somebody that's I don't want to tell somebody what I was told. You didn't see what you saw. Yeah. Yeah. Because that's so insulting. Yes. And I wasn't there. I wasn't there, and I'm not going to discount your experience. If that's what you said you saw, then that's what you saw. Right. I can't make heads or tails of it, but that doesn't mean that isn't what you saw.
Sure. Yeah, exactly. And I guess all we can do is just resign ourselves to the fact that, and it sounds like a cop out, but it's honesty. We just don't know. We have no idea.
I don't. Yeah.
Yeah. And like Wes Germer says, nobody's got these things in their garage to study. So there's just no recourse to really finding out, at least currently. Maybe technology will catch up with that or whatever, but at least now we just don't know. So
exactly.
So you also, as you mentioned, you've been investigating. Where have you investigated? What areas? I mean, you don't have to be specific, but just what regions?
So here in Texas, obviously, where I am, I've investigated California, Oregon, Washington, Colorado,
Wow.
Georgia.
Okay.
Trying to think, where else have I been? Louisiana.
You ever checked out Florida?
I've not been to Florida.
Oh, okay.
Not a fan of humidity. My husband cave dives in Florida, and he said, if you don't like humidity, honey, don't bother. And I can't imagine trekking through a swamp looking for something that smells like the swamp ape reportedly smells.
Yeah. Well, that brings up an interesting point, and that's a great discussion point in dealing with Bigfoot. And I realize we're kind of hopscotching around, and I apologize, but it's just really neat to pick your brain about these things. I find it interesting that some people's reports with Bigfoot, and not just exclusively the skunk ape, but Bigfoot anywhere, sometimes people smell that horrible smell.
Yes.
And other times people are like literally feet away and smell nothing. Like there's no, and my opinion on this, and I know other people have shared this, but I came to this conclusion on my own and then did more research and found that other people have come to this conclusion. So I'm not just robbing somebody else's idea and saying, hey, this is my idea. But I think it must be some sort of glandular response. I used to have a California king snake. And I love this snake, and it was great. But if I ever was a little more quick picking it up, it would shoot out this musky, horrible smell, and it was terrible. I had to wash the snake, wash my hands. It was just gross. It just smelled putrid. But it was a stress response, and that's what kind of led me to believe, since those smells are not consistent in every report, but they seem to occur in specific situations, or, maybe even the people don't know why that's triggered that stress response. Maybe it's the females that can do it, and maybe the males don't as much. Like if they've got a young or something, it's like a first level of defense. Like, I'm going to create this smell that nobody's going to want to get near. That's even makes a skunk smell like a flower, or something like that. But what are your thoughts on that?
No, I agree that it's likely a trigger, a stress response to it. I mean, you can also go I hate the word woo. I really hate that word. But you could go the supernatural route too, and say, the ones that are hopping in and out of dimensions are the ones that are not emitting any kind of smell, and the ones that are flesh and blood that are terrestrial 100% of the time are going to be emitting that odor no matter what, because they're here in the swamps, in the woods, just getting that feral smell in their fur, because wild animals stink. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you can smell a hog here in Texas. You can smell a hog. You can hear them 9 times out of 10 before you get close enough to smell them. But man, you can smell a hog. And try not to get close enough to a bear to smell it, but I'm pretty sure you could probably smell a bear too.
Sure. Well, even raccoons are real musky, really. Yeah. So you're right. There definitely is a feral smell to them, or like you said, they're not going to the groomer anytime soon. So whatever they got into is what you're going to be dealing with.
Yeah. And I mean, consider the time of year and the area that you're in. Now, the, colder areas, the cold air is going to dampen a smell, where if you're in a more humid environment, the moisture molecules are going to attach to that scent and kind of spread that out.
That's a great point too. Wow, that's really cool. So, but do you also do paranormal, like ghost investigating, or not as much, or where's your?
I do some ghost investigating.
Okay.
I I would say I don't really do Fae investigating. That's more like book reading, but I've seen some crazy things in my day.
Oh, you got to come back and talk about that sometime, because I'm fascinated with that. And unfortunately, the stories about that stuff are so few and far between. And I'm not suggesting those stories aren't out there, but like with Bigfoot, there's a lot of so much traction behind people being involved or at least interested in Bigfoot, because it's everywhere. If you look on the, especially in our communities, it's like, yeah, Bigfoot, and right. Conferences all over the place. But with the things like the Fae, it doesn't seem like it's as common for people to discuss. It still feels like it's one of those subjects that, I believe in Bigfoot, but I don't know.
Fairies.
Yeah, fairies. What? What are you, a child?
You're insane.
Right. Yeah. But those legends are as old as time, and they are global, dealing with this phenomena of the Fae, and what we understand is the Fae. Of course, the names are varied around the globe, but there's cultures everywhere that have versions of this, and I'd love to pick your brain about the Fae and talk about that next time you come on.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you're game.
Yeah. I am game. Yeah, I've got paranormal stories. If you have paranormal stories, I've got Fae stories. I mean, you can't be doing the research, right, and go out into these very, very remote places for stretches on end, and not come back with some crazy stories. If you're open-minded, if you're closed-minded, I don't think that you open yourself up to experiences.
Right.
Fair enough. But if you're open-minded, or if you're somebody who is just prone to this, like I've had weird things happen to me my whole life. I think that just follows you, right? Yeah. And you're going to be more prone to having the experiences when you go out in the woods versus somebody who just shuts that off. Yes. To quote Lydia Dietz, I myself am strange and unusual. So I can see that.
That's a great point, and that's something that I don't think I was prepared for. Now, I know I've had a lot of different experiences, but honestly, before I started doing all this, I thought, man, am I just kind of nuts? Why am I keep on seeing these things and experiencing these things? Am I just really misinterpreting the reality around me? Because we kind of live in our own little microcosm. But after getting involved with this, after actively talking to more and more witnesses all the time and doing research, there is a commonality behind that. Like anybody that's had one paranormal experience is so much more mathematically likely to have more, and maybe one more, maybe a lifetime of more. But that does seem to be one event that opens the floodgates for a ton of things to go on. Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that, and we can test it, because my husband, I wouldn't say he doesn't believe. He would just tell me, I've never had anything happen to me. I just never had anything happen to me. Well, sir, the house we currently live in is haunted. There's spirits here. And I told him, like, I've seen this ghost dog. I can smell this chick's perfume at different places. It's like gardenia perfume. I don't have gardenias, like or jasmine. It's one of the flowers, but it's not growing around here. There's no reason for it. And I certainly don't wear that perfume. But then I saw the rear end of a dog turn a corner in our house not long after we moved in. I don't own dogs.
Well, that is peculiar.
And and then after some time, he was here alone in the house. And at that point my mother had a puppy, right? A little small dog. And she had left it in the house with my husband, or he thought so. So he had asked her to put it out back. He was on the phone, again, alone in the house with a friend of his. He was on the phone with a friend of his. And the dog ran from the living room into the dining room here. And he was like, I thought I told her to put that dog out. So he follows the dog into the dining room. He loops around into the kitchen. He's looking all over for this dog, can't find it. He goes to our back door, looks out the window of the back door, and the dog's out in the yard playing. And I was like, you saw the ghost dog.
Nice.
Now prepare yourself, sir. Hopefully you're going to see more.
Yeah. Yep, that was the event. That was the breaking the seal, so to speak. And there does seem to be something about that, and I'm not quite sure what it is, but I think it might have something to do with our pineal or our sensory, or even our attention span. I think part of the fact that some people just don't see anything is because they're not really paying attention, or at least having that awareness for those possibilities. But now it's there. Now he's seen it. So how was he excited about that experience, or was he concerned? What was his take? I mean, he's lived with you, obviously, so
he's hard to read with it. I don't know that he wasn't concerned.
Okay.
And I don't know if excited is really the word for it. I think he was maybe confused because he was like trying to wrap his little logical mind around that.
His man brain, yeah.
Yeah, he was like, the dog was out back. He goes, I think I saw the ghost dog. And I was like, yeah, you did, didn't you?
Oh, neat.
And he said, well, that's okay. Well, I guess that's cool. I did. That's the first time I've ever seen anything like that. And I was like, yeah.
But do you think that's, and this is just a personal opinion thing, but I've often thought that I'm pretty sure probably everybody has had some form of paranormal experience in their life. It's whether or not they acknowledge it as such. And it might be just something as more mundanely like, wow, why are my keys over there? I never put them there. How'd they get there?
Yeah.
That kind of thing, which I think could just be absent-mindedness, but it could also have been some kind of A-port or D-port or whatever. D-port and then A-port, whatever. But I think we are often confronted with those things, but perhaps we're just tuned to, well, that's weird. But anyway, back to the rest of my life, and it becomes this awkward footnote or side thought that just gets kind of discarded. But would you agree?
They just don't pay attention. Yeah, I totally agree with that. Yeah. They just chalk it up to, well, I thought I put it over there. I guess I didn't.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Or they just, or they don't pay enough. They're not people that pay attention to detail.
Right.
You're noticing, because I'll notice small movement, right? I'll notice slight changes. I notice detail. I notice a lot of detail, like in my day-to-day life.
Okay.
So if something's odd, something's out of place, like I see it immediately.
It's a beacon for you.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I mean, people that probably pick up patterns fairly easily are more likely to, notice things like that. Whereas, my husband, who just puts his head down and plows through the day, probably isn't going to be, it's just bulldozing through his day, just in Chris world, like isn't necessarily going to notice things like that. It's not a bad thing. I mean, it's just the way it is.
We're all individuals, and neither. Yeah. I mean, it's just his worldview versus yours, but that's cool. I know we've burned through the hour in a hurry, and it's like, God, I've got a million more questions. So you're definitely going to have to come back.
Yeah. But I'll have to tell you, the paranormal stories that we'll have to touch on. Okay. And the face story. So I have to tell you about the little person, like I don't know if it was an elf. I don't know if it was a red cap. I don't know. I saw something in the woods. I'll have to tell you about the phantom car that rolled up on me and my friend.
Oh, nice.
And I'll have to tell you about the creature, like spirit, that infiltrated my house. And it's the only time, because my house is haunted, but it's very peaceful. I don't like, nothing here scares me. It's the only time I've been like concerned in my house. And it circled my house for most of the night before it came inside.
Wow.
So I'll have to tell you the story of those.
You're an excellent pitch person. Those are excellent cliffhangers. You just set the stage. I can't even wait to hear it now. And I got to wait till the next time we talk, but this will be excellent. Thank you first and foremost for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. It was an amazingly fun conversation with you, and I really am glad that you came on.
Well, thank you so much. I had such a good time, and I can't wait to come back and tell you all the other.
I can't wait till you come back. But will you please take a couple minutes and let people know how to stay in touch with you, and where's your show, and how to find what you're doing?
Sure. So you can find my show on YouTube. There are a few Our Paranormal Worlds out there, which I didn't realize when I set that up. So the easiest way to find my show is to type in at Monica's Paranormal World. So it's Monica S, Monica's plural, Paranormal World in the YouTube search bar, and it will take you right to my channel. And my channel logo is a blue world with blue headphones on. So it's pretty distinct.
Very cool. Very cool. And are you on social media, or do you encourage anybody to follow you through that? Do you have an Our Paranormal World page?
Yeah. So I do have an Our Paranormal World Facebook page.
Okay.
People tend to find my personal Facebook page and send me friend requests, which is fine if I know you, but I don't know you, probably not going to let you on there. And you'd be sorely disappointed because I don't post anything about, Paranormal World, any of that on my personal page, because I've got like a lot of business associates and
sure,
not everybody needs to have that shoved in their face on the day. But I also have an Instagram page for Our Paranormal World, and I have a TikTok channel for Our Paranormal World. And I do a lot of little shorts on Instagram, and I load those over to TikTok as well, where I talk about little snippets of different kind of fae and things like that. So little infomercials.
I've really loved those. I've watched several of them in there, and they're really, really well done. So please,
thank you.
Please keep doing them, because I that's, and this is kind of the trend in our society lately, but we're all jammed for time. And so it's easy to consume a short about something rather than 2-hour episodes. So I'm really glad you're doing those.
Well, thanks. Yeah, I figure 90 seconds of information on, obscure fae is like a digestible little nugget of something for people to, take with them.
Absolutely. Well, thank you again for being here, and we'll definitely get you back maybe in the next month or two if you're available. We'll of course connect the dots, but this has been a blast. Thanks a bunch.
Thank you so much. It has been fun. I look forward to coming back.
Oh, good. You'll have to come on the live show too.
Oh, that'd be fun.
Yes. Well, let's figure that out.
I got the personality for live.
You're a wiry one, ain't you? All right.
I'm wily.
Well, thanks again. And we'll be in touch and get you back here. So have a wonderful day.
You too. Thank you.
All right, everybody, that's going to wrap it up for us today. So hope you guys enjoyed the show, and thank you again so much for all your love and support. And remember, if you want to follow the Paranormal Portal, probably the easiest way is to head over to paranormalportal.net. And that's the homepage for the Paranormal Portal. And you'll find links to all of our different social media and sites and information about the shows, including our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/paranormalportal. Or just look for Paranormal Portal on Google or whatever search engine, and you'll find links to our social media such as Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. So we're kind of all over the place, and we're spreading as well as we can. But anyway, thank you so much for the love and support. Y'all take care, and remember, we love y'all. Be good, be kind, be nice. Take care of each other, help each other out, find the magic in every day, and remember to laugh as much as you can. Until next time.